Alrighty, hello and welcome, folks, to the Sunshine Reformer podcast. My name is Greg,
and my name is Gabriel.
And thanks, of course, to S for stopping by. So this week we've got a lot to talk about. Every week we have a lot to talk about. There's just so much happening as we inch nearer and closer and uncomfortably close to this election week that's coming up. We're what, only 2 weeks away or something like that?
No, something. I think 3 weeks. Nope. November 3rd is election day. That is 3 weeks away exactly tomorrow, something like that. So
exactly. So it's getting kind of wild out there. What's going on with you, Gabriel? Anything in your personal life that's fun and exciting?
A lot of running around.
Yeah.
Oh man, when you have family all over the state, driving is like a second job.
A little ASMR happening here. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. The sound of pouring a beer is actually really satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
But we drove.
It's also really tasty.
Yesterday, we were playing D&D. My family and I, we played D&D. I'm the DM, and
I just played D&D also recently.
Nice.
On Saturday.
Are you the player or DM?
I'm a player. My friend Robbie. Shout out to Robbie and Stacy, who I believe are listeners. We did a giant. It was like a 9-person game at a winery in Plant City over the weekend. So it was pretty fun.
And if you guys aren't listening, Greg will find out.
Exactly. They only live like 2 miles away, so I'll get them on board somehow.
He will know.
Exactly.
But I was DMing, and then like in the middle, my brother's like, "Hey, what are we having to eat?" And my mom was like, "Oh yeah, we're having this, and this." And it's like all barbecue stuff. Like they're doing ribs, they're doing like chicken, and they're doing like burgers. It's all. Right. I'm like, oh, we only live like an hour and 50 minutes away from them. So, yeah, we're coming over. So, so we were like, oh yeah, okay, let's end now because we gotta get going now to make it there by dinner. I take a shower, throw crap in my backpack, and we're gone. We were gone in like 30 minutes, and then yeah, we drove back this morning, cleaned the house, and then I went to Walmart to get some clothing stuff, and now I'm back. That's my weekend. Woohoo!
Nice.
That's the most exciting stuff.
I love it. We so like I just said, I went to there's a winery in, I believe it's Plant City, Lakeland area, which is on the way to Tampa from here, right off of I-4. Mm-hmm. And they had a bunch of different wines and also beer on tap, which I was happy about, of course. And we met up with like, I don't know, probably more than the CDC regulation. Let's be real here. I don't know what it is, but the winery itself was very clean, and all the staff was wearing masks and everything. So I felt as safe as I could have been. But yeah, it was just basically like, hey, like show up if you want to just drink, cool. If you want to play D&D, cool. And my friend Robbie, like I just said, he was the DM, and he came up with a very quick campaign that had to do with like pirate ships and krakens and all that kind of stuff. So it was just a lot of fun, and we just kind of got drunk and played D&D.
That's fun. That is so much fun.
There were puppy dogs involved. They were outside running around. Weather was beautiful, so
it was beautiful today coming back. Like we rolled down the windows this morning. It was 75. Uh-huh. It was just awesome. It's like my favorite time of year in Florida is the winter.
It is, right. It's starting to get that time of year.
Winter.
It's
really spring, winter, and fall. It's like the same because like spring gets like kind of cold sometimes, fall gets kind of cold sometimes, and winter gets kind of cold sometimes, and the rest. Exactly. And then we have like I think 6 days where it's like freezing temperature, and that's not consecutive. That's like one day will be 80, the next day it's like freezing, and then it's like 50 the next day after that. So I love this time of year. It's my favorite time of year. Feels so good.
I agree.
Humidity's down until the pollen comes. That's when
Oh,
that's the indicator of it's ruined. It's done. Is when pollen's
until the
here.
what comes?
The pollen.
Oh, pollen. Yeah.
And
yeah.
the oak trees just inseminate cars with
Yeah.
their pollen. Just
Right. I hear pumpkins are in season or whatever.
yeah. Well, my grandmother, she's from New York, from upstate New York too. That she
Yeah.
grew up on a farm, and she said that Florida, because it doesn't have like proper seasons, you can kind of grow anything almost any time of the year, with like exceptions of like obvious things like apples or, you know, like things that require like a cold, like a frost
Right.
to I don't know what the word is, but I guess to start germination, some things require it to be frosty before it grows.
Right.
But aside from that, you can grow almost like I'm growing potatoes right now. This is not like the time of year for growing potatoes, but they're growing just fine. So I think
Well,
you're supposed to grow them in spring.
I definitely have the room. Like I've got a giant backyard that I'm not going to try to stray too far away from the point today, but
Yeah,
I just took my car and I ripped. I don't know if you saw those pictures on the line chat.
I did.
I ripped a giant tree stump out of the ground with my car that I feel very proud of because I didn't think it was going to work at all, and it totally did. And so, I'm trying to just clear space in my backyard to try to do some gardening and, put flowers in and just make it look better in general. And I'm just trying to do it myself, do it yourself kind of thing. Because gardening, as it turns out, if you hire people to do it for you, is very expensive.
Yes, it is. It is very expensive.
Landscaping and whatnot. So it's going to be a slow burn, but I'm going to get it done. And I just love. I haven't been in a situation where I have a backyard to do anything in a long time. So I'm very excited about it.
I am too. I have a lot of stuff I got to work on my yard, but that's got to be done next year. Let's move on to some actually interesting things and not our boring lives.
Exactly. The people don't want to hear about our lives.
And do you want to start with
that's a blog.
Some of your gun stuff here? Because you got some spicy articles.
Spicy content.
Yeah, you got some spicy things happening here.
I love it. All right, yes. So I'll go ahead and pull up the Disney one if you want to do the same.
Yep.
And so what happened was, I feel like, we had the guy shooting through the windshield last week, or not the last episode, but the one before that. I just feel like Orlando is just a magnet for craziness and crazy people. I don't know. In this case, I believe it was a tourist, but he was from South Florida, so it's still Florida. So so I live in Orlando, of course, as I mentioned many times. I live only about, there's like little fruit flies. I gotta do something about it. Anyways, so I live only about 20 minutes away from Disney World property. My wife and I go there quite often, or at least we did pre-COVID. And as most people know, they've got hotels, and 75 million people a year visit there. It's a very popular place in the world. And as a result of all that, there's lots of different people that visit. Well, this person in particular decided that because of what's going on in the world right now, that he was going to bring his AR-15 with him inside of his hotel room, which I think, because I always kind of think about, like, I kind of try to put I know that I feel like I have a little bit more rational of a mind. And I don't necessarily think that this would be me, but I do carry a firearm with me everywhere I go. I have my concealed carry permit. And so when I'm out in public, I usually have a firearm. And when I go to Disney World, though, because I go often, I either leave it in my car, which I know you're not supposed to do, but whatever. I feel like it's as safe as it's going to get in my car. Or if I know I'm going to be there for a while, like even if I was spending the night, if I was spending the night, I'd probably leave it in my hotel room. They do have safes in the hotel. But at the very least, I definitely would not bring my AR-15 with me
Well,
to
it's
a
like because
hotel.
that's the point of your concealed carry license is so that you can legally carry a concealable pistol or something with you. You know,
Right,
if you I don't think there's anything that Disney could really charge him for.
right. No, he
I'm
was not
not
charged.
I'm not familiar with any like laws aside from this just being a news article. But to just hypothetically, if this went to court, I don't think a judge would rule in favor of anything because he brought a rifle. I
Right.
think they would just say like, look, just keep it to your concealed carry next time. Don't bring additional. No need for it.
Right. So Florida, as we mentioned in another episode, is not an open carry state. But Disney World property is private property. And the way that, if you talk to any of their PR people or just call them and ask them about their firearms policy, they do not want firearms on their property at all. However, of course, America being America, you can have your gun with you. I believe what it says here is that the hotel ended up, they just gave the firearms to the hotel to hold on to while he was there, and then when he left, they gave him back, and that was that. Because I believe he did have a concealed carry permit.
Easy peasy lemon pajamas.
Exactly. But just again, speaking from a tactical standpoint, or even if you really just want to take self-defense seriously, which is fine, just bring a handgun. The thing about an AR-15, and it's what I recommend to people that, for example, live in apartment buildings or any other communal living space, AR-15 bullets very easily go through walls and other building material. Maybe not brick, but you know what I mean. Most hotels are made with, I don't want to say cheap, but just, regular building materials in general are not bulletproof at all. Efficient, yes.
Efficient.
Affordable. And so having an AR-15 in general in a hotel room like that is a very poor choice, especially if you find yourself in the very unlikely chance that you're going to have to defend yourself inside of your hotel room. You shoot that thing, it's going to go through walls. You're probably going to hit somebody else that you don't intend on hitting, and then that does open up a giant can of worms for you. So I would say don't do that. I would say if you really want to, bring a handgun. I would probably bring my handgun with me, even if I was staying on property at a hotel. I've definitely taken my gun with me in my travels. I haven't really traveled outside of Florida in a while, but when I have gone to hotel rooms and stuff, I bring my gun with me. So that's all I have to say about that. People are crazy. Don't bring your AR-15 to Disney World.
Another thing is like, it was the hotel. All I could see is they would also want to prevent like another Las Vegas shooter thing, because this goes back to, if you have a concealed carry, you have absolutely zero reason to bring any additional weapon. Extra mags, sure, yeah, that probably is reasonable, but I think a lot of hotel managers and maybe like corporate owners like Disney in this case would probably be a lot more concerned with rifles being carried through like hotels and such, just because they don't want to be at the epicenter of something like that.
Very true.
I could just see, and Disney's all about PR. They would kill people to make sure. I say that ironically, like in a video game, they would not actually kill people, but they would go really far out of their way to make sure that the PR in relation to that would be cleaned up and tidied up to some extent.
Right.
So,
and that's why, even in the article, it just says that, no arrests were made. The person was not violent. They were there legally. They were carrying legally, all that kind of stuff. There's no language that suggests that he's a terrorist or has any ties to anything. And for all we know, it was just some probably right-wing supporting person who was afraid of Antifa and all that. I think that's actually what it said. He said because of unrest or whatever that's going on in the world.
Because of riots and civil unrest going on down south and in Central Florida area, according to the report. That's what he told the deputies, by the way. He brought it for safety. The man also told deputies he had a 9mm handgun in his backpack. The man who had concealed weapons permit also had with him 3 rifle magazines, blah, blah, blah. And that looks like that's all that is said about that.
Yeah. So I don't recommend it from a tactical standpoint. I don't recommend it because it's Disney World, and like you just said, they are not to be trifled with, even though you're not breaking any laws. Whatever.
What I think is really funny about this, real quick, is the hotel worker noticed the bag was heavy to lift and unzipped it. And found the AR-15. I'm thinking, like, buddy, what the hell did you put on your AR-15 to make it heavy?
Yeah. What? Well, I mean, maybe it was like a flimsy bag or something.
It could be, and it was just not proportionately weighted or something. But I just find it interesting that, I mean, the dude's obviously carrying bags all day, you know?
Right.
I also find it weird that he just decided to unzip it.
Yeah.
Like, that's no reason to do that. I don't know.
You're right. That is interesting. I forgot about that detail. And of course, we wouldn't even have this article in front of us if it weren't for that person.
Yeah.
Probably.
A little nosy. Personally, I wouldn't want that. Even, like, what if you unzipped it and found nothing, and then, like, it's like you just went through someone's private luggage. Oh, because it was heavy. What if I carry $1 million worth of cash? That shit's heavy. Cash, look, cash. Once you stack it up, that ain't light. I don't want someone going through. I don't want. I'm sorry. I'm done. Whoop.
That's okay.
I'll pin it.
Coming up with these scenarios, yeah. Moving on, right?
Yeah.
We've got. So we'll end, or we'll go here, and then we'll end with the one about gun sales. Okay. So this one, I know we like to keep it Florida on this podcast, but I'm from Michigan, and I still have friends and family that live there. So I typically I still follow their politics and kind of what's going on there. And this was kind of interesting to me. Michigan bans open carry of guns at polling locations on Election Day. So here's my feeling on this. I mentioned in another episode, and I think Gabriel, we agreed in this on this issue of open carrying. I am for open carrying. I don't believe that there's any reason to suggest or any evidence to suggest that it makes you a target or anything like that. Will people get maybe uncomfortable if you walk around, a Whole Foods, for example, or something? Maybe, but I think in general, people might just look at you and then just carry on with their day. As far as going into like government buildings and like courtrooms or courthouses or whatever, police stations, that kind of thing, I don't think I would ever feel the need to open carry into a situation like that. And I think this kind of extends into that category for me. I don't think if I was going into a polling location, I don't feel like I would have a need or anything like that to go and bring my gun into a polling location. So the fact that this is even a thing, I think, is kind of just kind of reflective of, again, like our current situation in our country, the current political situation. People feel the need to bring AR-15s into places that they don't need to, even though like Disney. Well, this is open carrying. So if you're open carrying an AR-15 into a polling location, I don't know. I just think that's a little bit of overkill, so to speak. Pun not intended. And you're just trying to draw attention to yourself. So.
I think this is a direct result of two things. First of all, obviously, like the the Book thing that happened last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, with the attempted
kidnapping
the attempted kidnapping coup, whatever you want to call it, of the of the Michigan mayor or something like that. Governor. And then of course there was attempted one in Kentucky as well. I think I linked that in the line chat.
I heard about that.
That happened earlier last week, something like that. So first of all, that I think it's a response to that, and then secondly, I think it's a response to Trump's open call to have Republican people or conservative people standing at and like poll watching. And I don't want to misquote or anything. I'll see if I can find it, but I think he also loosely said something along the lines that would basically come around to like intimidation. I don't quote me on that. I'll look for something later. But it sounds like it's in response to that. And we have had a few instances, I think it was in North or South Carolina the past couple weeks, where in some early voting locations, there were some conservatives that were charged with voter intimidation as a result of it. So I could see this being a response to those two things specifically.
Right.
You know, there's already been instances of voter intimidation this year alone. It wouldn't be a hard leap to make to say that it very well could be escalated just by the fact that somebody's open carrying in a voting location.
Right.
Hopefully it won't. I hope to God not. But things happen. So
yeah. Well, it's the other thing I just thought about as you were saying that is, you know, there's a time and a place to do protesting. You know, while we do recognize and acknowledge that there is left and right wing fighting going on between people, I think the majority of people just want to go cast their fucking ballot and go home, and they don't want to have to fucking deal with, you know, people at protests open carrying or whatever, you know, that's been going on recently. I know I don't. I know that I've got a schedule. I actually was planning on I was planning on early voting today, which is today's the first day for Orange County to early vote. I'll probably have to go tomorrow because I'm not going to have time today. But the point is I've got stuff to do just like everybody else, and you know, in my opinion, it's a worse crime to do voter intimidation than just to show up with a firearm and just, you know, live your life or whatever. So that's crazy to me. I didn't even know that voter intimidation was happening, although it doesn't surprise me at all. Of course.
Yeah. And again, that's something I didn't actually intend to. I haven't actually read any of these articles. It'll just like, I don't know if you guys know this, but when we do these articles, we do these things separately, and then we like see them at the same time. Because
you mean you and me?
Yeah, you and I, because it's supposed to be like kind of like a learning experience for the two of us as well. Right. You know. Right. So I actually, I kind of, part of me kind of wishes I had looked into this just a little bit before, because then I could have brought that up. But I'll just provide the source for the voter intimidation in the description.
So what happens with intimidation? Is it just like, do they know just by looking at you like who you're going to vote for? Somehow?
Well, I mean, stereotyping is a thing, and the reason why voter intimidation, at least as far as I can remember, is a crime is that historically, when people would go to vote, it used to be the case that it was like incredibly open and it was very non-private. It was very public, and then I think this is when it happened. Was the early 1900s when big corporate entities were hiring people to go to the polls to make sure you voted for the candidate who would benefit the corporate entities. And if you didn't, you would get fired. I believe in the United States, that's how it started. I'll see if I can find some historical docs on that.
That's crazy.
In addition to that, when the civil rights movement happened, and even prior to that, when just black people first started to be able to vote in the United States, there's a lot of voter intimidation there. And to some extent, there still is. Maybe not directly at the polls as much, but it does exist prior to people going to the polls. And then when women got their right to vote,
which wasn't that long ago.
That wasn't that long ago. It was only at the beginning of I think a little over 100 years ago, something like that. Not that long ago.
That's crazy.
When women started, getting the right to vote as well, they would go to vote. And of course, we'd see it again. Voter intimidation started happening during that time. So it's a thing. So yeah, stereotyping does come into play. Of course. Also, like if you roll up in a car and you've got like a Biden-Harris sticker or even a Bernie sticker, like that goes back to last week. We were talking about it. You're painting a target on yourself. Now, like you pull up in that car, they know you're obviously not going to vote for Trump.
Right.
even if you decided last minute you're going to vote for like a third party or something,
Right.
So there's that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell the motherfucker to run up on me and see what happens. I can't even fucking imagine, man. It's just it's the most insane thing.
It's stupid.
It's so stupid.
But it's a tactic, and I mean, I guess it works because there's a crime against it, or there's laws against it.
Well, it can't be that widespread, right?
I don't know. I don't think it's that widespread, but I'm not also that familiar with like any specific statistics. So anecdotally, I've never heard of it being widespread, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I could be wrong there.
Yeah, I'm gonna go vote tomorrow probably, and I'll report back and see what happens.
You'll look at everybody with like a very stern.
Yes, I'm gonna have nothing but an angry look on my face the whole time.
All right.
And then I'll have this, on my hip or whatever, my handgun. All right, yeah. So moving on from there, a more happy and positive and normal headline, which is no shock to anybody. Anybody who owns guns, even if you just have one gun and you are just on the bare level of, the surface level of gun ownership, that guns have been popular this year. And so we've got 2020, a record year for gun sales in Florida. It says firearms purchase background checks conducted by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement show a record number of Floridians are taking up arms this year. Gun industry insiders say civil unrest and the election have created a perfect storm for increased demand. More than 1.1 million background checks have been conducted since the start of 2020. With 2.5 months to go in the year, it's already smashed the previous record set in 2016. We've seen an unprecedented number of people coming and buying guns, says Charlie Strickland, owner of Talon Tactical Outfitters in Midway, Florida. I don't know where that is. Strickland says it's not necessarily typical gun buyers stocking up. Huge numbers of minorities, women, and those numbers are growing.
Which is good. It's super good.
Yeah. And it says right here, the increase in concern has caused a lot of people on both sides of the political spectrum. We see a lot of people who are very liberal on a lot of subjects are in here buying guns to protect themselves.
Which is
shocker.
Good. It's great.
Yeah.
And I'd love to understand what the actual meaning of liberal is there, because because everybody knows all liberals are communists.
We're basically all the same.
Yeah, so I would love to know, like, if they actually intended, like, liberals, like Democrats who have no other understanding of the meaning beyond social democracy, like a soc dem, or right. If they use liberal as loosely as liberally as as conservatives will sometimes with like, oh yeah, if you're liberal, you're a communist. Like,
Right.
well, okay,
The end.
yeah. So I'd like to know that,
Yeah.
because it'd be really cool to break that out and see how many like moderate Democrats maybe are actually like now applying and getting guns and all this stuff. It'd be cool to
Right.
see if that's the case. It could just be the case that it's just us who are in the far left who probably wouldn't consider ourselves liberals, at least
Well,
by this use.
Right. The thing that, you can say that there's 1.1 million background checks in Florida or whatever. I know that myself personally, 3 of those were from me. I physically purchased 3 firearms. Was it 3 this year? I think it was at least 3, maybe 4. I can't remember. And so, you kind of have to account for stuff like that where it's just one person buying multiple firearms, which obviously does happen. I'm planning on buying a couple more next week also.
Well, also the ones that aren't done this way. This is just the like through FFLs and stuff. I purchased a firearm through a friend, just because he was getting a new gun and he didn't need or want his old gun, so I bought
Private sales.
Private sales.
Yeah.
So that doesn't even include private sales.
It certainly doesn't. And I don't think privates. I'm really sorry. These flies are just. I got to get on Amazon tonight and buy a fucking fly killer thing. It's not. I think that private sales obviously does happen. I think, but the majority of gun buying is probably done through FFLs.
Yeah.
I don't think most, especially first-time buyers, they're not
buying
getting
a new gun.
They're buying a new gun
probably
from
off the internet.
Probably off the internet, or just at different gun shops that are around Florida. But I would be interested to see what the percentage of private sales is, and obviously it's not regulated, so there's no way we can get that information.
It'd probably be some like big brainiac kind of person who graduated from like Harvard, Stetson, and like MIT simultaneously with 17 doctorates, who just like can count, like, I don't know, just some guy who's like, oh yeah, it's probably this many.
Yeah. It's probably a lot, but definitely not the majority.
Yeah.
And then but it's going back to the politics of gun buying, and the numbers. It's so I've kind of been doing some very, very small sample size, not trolling, but just so like I'm a part of. We've talked about like the atheism thing, so I'm a part of a couple different atheist Facebook groups, on Facebook, of course, and a couple other just non-gun but sort of left-leaning groups or whatever. And every once in a while, somebody will start talking about politics or whatever, and I'll say, "Oh, I'm left-leaning and I carry a handgun every day," and da 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 da. One of them, my wife and I used to do the Disney races. They've got the half marathons, and they're all like princess themed and all of these different things. And they're not doing them anymore now, of course, because of COVID. But there's a big giant Facebook page, or group rather, that's Run Disney. Like, it's a Run Disney group, and there's probably 60 or 70,000 people in the group. And this wasn't that long ago. Maybe I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, somebody posted an article about a woman who was attacked while running. And again, this is a non-political, just Run Disney group, whatever. And I just said, hey, if you're a woman or a man, whatever, and you feel like you're vulnerable when you go out for a run, when you've got your headphones on and you can't hear your surroundings, maybe carry a fucking firearm. They sell these little tiny, like Ruger LCP2s. They come in 380 and 22 long rifle. That's what my wife carries, the 380 one.
22 will still kill, by the way, for anybody who's going to start raging in the comment section or something like that.
22 will absolutely kill it.
It'll still kill. They used that. Farmers use it, and I did FFA too. 22 well placed to like a pig will kill it. You're not wrestling with it. It's domesticated. You just walk up to it and like pow. That's what you use because it's cheap and it's there. So
yeah, and those guns are smaller than an iPhone. They fit right in the palm of your hand. The 22 version actually comes with 10 round magazines.
Hey, that's nice.
So that's plenty to do what you got to do if somebody's if you're running and somebody attacks you from behind or whatever. You pull that bitch out and just start shooting.
And it's super cheap.
And it's inexpensive. Absolutely. So anyway, I've been making these comments on these Facebook pages that are non-gun and non-political, and you would be surprised how many, staying outside of the categories that we usually put ourselves in, how many people are like, oh yeah, I'm a liberal, but I bought a gun this year or whatever. That story. I've seen that story happen many, many times on the Facebook comments, and that's just me just talking to people on the internet. So to see how widespread it is, I have a prediction that within the next 5 to 10 years, if you want to call it the next 2 election cycles, I can imagine seeing the gun argument drop off a little bit on the liberal side of things. On the Democratic side of things. I really
hope so, because I feel like people who run for office, especially the larger offices like Senate, Congress, and President, I feel like they're required to at least talk about it. Like, what's your position? And that's fair. That's fair. There's been a lot of tragedy over the recent years, at least when it comes to specifically school shootings. But first of all, it's a Second Amendment right. So repealing that in any form or fashion, or even creating laws that would in any way impede on that, which is very difficult to do, would be difficult to do. I don't know, because if you do that, anybody can just go to the courts and just run up the courts until they get to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is probably going to rule in favor of the Second Amendment,
right?
Just because it's an amendment. And then the only way to undo that, so that the Supreme Court can't rule in that, you'd have to repeal it, which means you have to now get
or amend it,
like with the alcohol. Yeah. Prohibition, you just do another amendment, which both of those options are incredibly difficult to do. That's just so it's just not going to happen.
That's the biggest thing that really, really pisses me off about. Well, not okay. I should rephrase. That's not the biggest thing that pisses me off about the Republicans, but just I'm sure if you've been on the internet for more than 2 seconds, you've seen the ads. Let's say you go on YouTube or whatever, you've seen the ads for Donald Trump and for Biden. I think they're both annoying, but the number one thing that I think is annoying, and we get these mailers in the fucking mail too now.
Dude, it's fucking same. So many. So many trees.
But and I know that it's all just smear tactics and whatever, but saying that the Democrats are going to take away your guns is just not going to happen.
It ain't.
Because of what you just mentioned. The Second Amendment is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's just not.
And then another thing is even if, let's just say, for the sake of argument, we got 80% of the Senate Democrat, we got 80% of Congress Democrat, we have a president who's Democrat. Let's say they do make an amendment and for some reason it gets through, or they repeal the Second Amendment, whatever the case is. I would doubt, even still, you could probably still go to the Supreme Court and say this is unconstitutional.
Right.
And I have a feeling that because of previous precedent made, that they would just be like, oh yeah, turn the. Now I'm not like a constitutional lawyer or anything. I might be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that because of, again, previous precedent that has gone through in the past, that they would just be like, yeah, this is not cool, and they just like, no,
Right.
screw this, you can't do this anymore. And so, and then the actual, hello, I am coming from post-production, the editing, and I'm just going to be here to advise that we're going to be talking about suicide in relation to gun deaths and such. And if you are uncomfortable with that, or that's something that you are unable to handle, I advise you skip over this part to 53 minutes. Non-legal argument would be that we shouldn't repeal it because it wouldn't make a difference. We should just get better healthcare systems here, because 66% of gun deaths, or roundabout, are suicidality. So it's a mental health issue. And this is something the Republicans should have gone with, but they don't give a shit about healthcare, so it would have been very difficult for them to hold this position for too long. I know they did do this for a little bit. Well, it's mental health. We gotta address mental health. Okay, well, let's address mental health. And I think that's where like a lot of Democrats who still feel they still feel like we need to get rid of guns is because whether they realize this or not, Republicans didn't address mental health the way they should have back when it was being used as an excuse to not do anything with guns.
Have we talked about like what we think? Well, I have my opinions, of course, but I don't think we've talked about like what is scientifically proven that's going to be like the biggest thing to get rid of gun violence and weapon violence and stuff.
I don't think we've had that discussion, but I would bet healthcare would probably be like, if you could pick one thing, if I could pick one thing, it'd be healthcare. And I think that would address more than just gun issues. It would address like a lot of poverty issues, a lot of crime issues. And I think it would help we'd start seeing impoverished communities and some minority communities being able to actually like participate in a way that conservatives like to bootstrap about, like, well, if you only did this, it's like, well, if we actually provided things, I would say healthcare, but what is it? I mean, you sound like you know about this.
Yeah. So well, that was one of the first things that I looked into, like when trying to come up with talking points for talking to liberals about guns is, first of all, as you mentioned, how high the suicide rate is for firearms. It far outweighs violent homicides and even like police killings and stuff, like
and accidental discharges too.
Yeah, it's higher than all of that. And so, as I've mentioned before, I used to be in a group, a national group called the Liberal Gun Club. Mm-hmm. And shout out to them. They are a smaller group, of course, than like, let's say the SRA or even the National African American Gun Association. But they're a group nonetheless that's full of very passionate and intelligent people, liberals, of course, if you want to use that word. I don't typically like that word, but that's fine. And so they are, again, a group of people that are passionate about firearms, just like you and I are, and people in the SRA. And they're left-leaning. And so their website is actually really great. It's got a lot of really good information on it as far as stuff for first-time gun owners. Just a lot of really good resources out there for left-leaning firearms people. But right here, and I'll actually let me send you the link real quick so I can so you can put it up. And you can navigate, they've got a bunch of different stuff here. But when you look at, is it training? Okay. You have the link?
Yeah, I just pulled it up.
Okay, so if you go to the About Us section, in the first one right there, root cause mitigation. So this is a really, really great.
Oh, this is awesome. This is basically what I spent like hours trying to research, all summed up.
Exactly. So I think this was written by a gentleman by the name of Ed Harris, who is the de facto chapter, or I should say national president. They have a board, but like, of their leadership, whatever. But as I just said, it literally goes through every single reason of firearms violence. So suicide, homicide, mass shootings, and just all that kind of stuff. And then it also talks about what needs to be done, or what should be done in a perfect world that would mitigate these causes. Literally root cause mitigation. And so it basically, just to sum it up, it just talks about how important healthcare is, how important the wealth gap is, education, all of these things that, for the most part, we all are, care about and are trying to push in society. I wholeheartedly believe that if we had universally, I don't want to say universal health care, but just health care that's available to everybody, either at an affordable rate or just whatever you want to call that, accessible health care for everybody, education that was affordable and accessible, and had the wage situation figured out. I really believe that we could have guns in this country, and that firearms violence, specifically suicide, because that's the number one thing, I think all of that would drop dramatically if all of these other things were put into place on a large scale. So that's kind of where I was going with that.
Real quick, two things on this. One is going to be like a point. The other one's actually like, you kind of helped me transition a little bit. So I'm going to piggyback off that to transition. But the first thing is there is a counter argument to this, which I disagree with. And I have a counter argument to the counter argument. The counter argument to this would be like, well, if we a quick fix would be if we take away X guns or whatever, X gun, type of gun, whatever you want to call it, we could reduce the death rate from suicide dramatically, because it's harder to kill yourself. Guns have a higher success rate of finishing the act, so to speak.
Right, successfully killing yourself.
Yes. I guess we'll have to put a trigger warning in the beginning of this. I'll go back and I'll add a trigger warning. But the counter argument to that is that you will see a decrease in gun-related or suicide, gun death, but you will see an increase of attempts. So you haven't fixed the problem. You've made the suffering for these people last longer with scars, so to speak. Because if they're driven to that point, and I think there's some other statistics where it's like people who have access to other means are less likely to attempt in the first place. I think I don't know if that's correct. I think I've heard that, and I'll see if I can find some statistics for that. But even still, you'd still have an increase of attempts while maintaining that decrease of deaths with whatever measures you took. And I would say you did nothing in that case. Like you did nothing to actually help the problem. You just shifted how the problem has, like, what the end result of that problem is. You've done nothing to do. You've effectively sat there and you virtue signaled to yourself and to people of your in group, and that's not fair to those people who really do need help, really do need to see somebody or get the mental psychiatrics that would help offset whatever issues they may have. And that's just terrible. That's just that's not good. That's not good enough.
Right.
So that's depressing.
What was your counter argument though?
The counter argument was that second portion was that you would see the increase of attempts, and while the decrease of deaths would happen, that would do nothing. You are doing nothing to actually help these people.
So you don't think that increasing mental health?
No. What I'm saying is that the people who would say, well, if you just get rid of guns in the first place, you would decrease the death rate. My counter the counter to that would be, sorry, I didn't specify. I should have put a little there, but just because you decrease the death rate doesn't mean that you've decreased the issue. The issue is people getting to the point that they feel suicide is the correct option.
Right. Which is the root cause.
Which is the issue, whether it be depression, loneliness, mental instability because you don't have access to the drugs you need. Whatever the case may be, fixing these issues actually fixes the problem.
Right.
Not taking the guns away, because everybody has a kitchen knife.
Right.
Well,
that's the whole argument in famously anti-gun nations is they've taken the guns away, but look at it. Okay, so here's what it is. They've taken the guns away, which is whatever. It's almost like a moot point because they still have access to health care way over and above the United States.
Exactly.
I'm talking about like most European countries and, most Western nations.
Developed nations and such.
They have better access to health care, better access to education, and they don't have a wealth salary gap. There's people that are getting paid properly, and they have access to resources that are helpful. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not perfect, but it's so much better than the system that we have here in the United States. And I think that's the beat to death, stuff that we're talking about.
Well, you can look at Japan. Japan has one of the highest attempted suicide rates in the entire world.
Really?
One of the highest. They have absolutely no tolerance gun regulation. They don't do the gun thing at all.
Right.
Obviously, guns didn't help there. Or I guess taking them away didn't help there. They have other issues that they got to deal with. Also could. I'll go back and I'll source everything like I tend to do. But that may have changed. I know that's been a very consistent number in at least the first 10 years of the 21st century. I'm very certain that was a very consistent number and mostly unchanged. That could have changed now since they are an aging population. They're getting older. So, and they also have another thing about Japan that's really bad. They have virtually no immigration policy. That's another thing.
So you can't live there?
You could. There's like a lot of complicated visa measures you have to take. You have to be working there. You have to, be super sponsored or something. It's very difficult to live there as a non-native.
Wow. So I didn't know that.
That's why they have a super aging population, because as a nation develops, they're less likely to have as many children to keep up with the population's needs, plural. And because of that, they don't have any means of supplementing their population growth. So they start to see a population decline because fewer people are having more kids. That's a big reason why immigration is very important for a nation's health, growth, and development.
Right.
And maintenance too. So anyway.
Anyways.
That was
we're unpacking a lot here.
Yeah. So I guess let's transition to.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I am going to put a poll, just kind of as on a personal note. I have a opportunity, let's just put it that way, to purchase or change my carry gun in a positive way. The gun I have, let's just put it to rest. I've talked up my carry gun a lot on this podcast a lot. Talked about Canik firearms a lot, despite the politics surrounding the brand and the country of Turkey. I don't really want to get into that because that's a whole episode, I think, in and of itself, or at least my side of the topic. But there are lots of guns out there that are really cool, and I've always just wanted to do, since I kind of got back into guns a couple of years ago, I've been wanting to get my dream build, kind of, so to speak, going. So I don't know if, sound off in the comments. I don't know how many people we actually have on YouTube or whatever, or Twitter. But, I'm looking for, basically carry size, so Glock 19 sized guns, so CZP-10C, or I used to have a Smith & Wesson M&P. I wouldn't be above getting that again. Just, what is your favorite concealed carry handgun and why? Have you done anything to customize it? All that kind of stuff out there. I'm always looking to see what people have done on their own to sort of make whatever gun they buy like more their own personal style and stuff like that. So,
and
that's what I'm
he plans
doing.
on carrying it with the extended 40-round magazines.
Yes, exactly.
So
that's how we do it in Florida.
You got to find a matching holster and and pants that'll support that.
Yeah, I got to change my entire wardrobe. Probably buy a new house. No, I'm just kidding.
For those who don't know, for the 40-round magazine was a joke.
Yes, it is a joke. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing. So if that's going to be my own personal project coming up. So I'll post some pics to the gram and to the Twitter stream, and show what I'm going to buy, and I'll have to make all those decisions probably within the next week or so.
Well, it's the internet, so you have to get a yeet cannon.
I don't know what your obsession is with the stupid yeet cannon.
It was just so funny. It was a great meme. It was such a good meme.
It was a great short-lived meme. High point pistols, as I've said before, are a great novelty. Maybe one day I'll have one. I just can't. As a joke, yeah. I'm just not at that point in my gun ownership roadmap right now to buy a joke gun. So
that's fine.
Maybe one day.
One day. I'll keep looking on Gunbroker for like a broken one, because it's inevitable.
Right.
I'll keep looking for
even
a broken
if I had
one.
the slide would be fine.
Yeah, because that's all that's really different is the. I'm pretty
it just says yeet cannon on the slide, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So it's not special.
Yeah. All right, go on and tell the people about your content.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I know that just clipped really hard for everybody.
Yep.
So, okay. All right, I just pulled it up here. So I have 2020 census.gov. All right. I'm going to start this bit out with, if you haven't filled the census out yet, fill the census out like yesterday.
I don't think I've done that.
Fill it out. Fill it out. It's super important. I'm not memeing ya. It obviously only happens officially once every 10 years in the United States.
What is the website? 2020?
2020 census.gov.
Okay. I just want to be there with you.
Yeah.
It says they finished collecting responses.
So, have they? I know the Trump won a case to shorten the census collection from the Supreme Court. So, and I haven't kept up on the specific date for that yet. I feel so bad if that's the case.
I'm 100% sure that I didn't fill out the census this year.
Oh my gosh. Greg.
Well, we moved 2 times in the last
I would
12 months.
say that the census is probably more important than voting. I think
you're probably right.
It's more. I would argue, and I might get initial reaction, negative reaction, or not negative, but I'd probably get an initial counter reaction by saying this. I think it's more important than voting. I also think it's more important than actual activism, protesting and such. The reason why is because the census dictates representation and funding to different areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, I have an article up here, by the way. It basically talks about why there's an importance of the census data. First of all, it's redistricting. So your state's representatives, as you know, every state gets, I believe it's 2 Congress members, and then the Senate seats are determined by the amount of population you have. So it's a specific percentage of population. That's why there's like 400 something Senate seats or something like that. But there's only like 100 congressmen or Congress people or whatever the case is. So thus, if you've noticed, on most states right now have to vote for a senator in their district. If you look at a Senate map, you'll see that it's broken up in a bunch of different pieces on your state. Okay, those lines get redrawn, and people could gain or lose representation based on how the census turns out for those areas. So first of all, your Senate seat is determined by the census. Secondly, federal funding, census as well, because different regions, different demographics change as things change, of course. Texas, if you were to look up Texas population and demographic information 30 years ago, they would have been a fairly consistent, fairly non-changing state. And hold on, I'm getting a call. I'm just going to end this real quick. Fairly consistent, fairly non-changing state in terms of demographics, but recently, because of the lack of water in California, as well as the forest fires and other natural disasters there, as well as lack of opportunity in a lot of other places, Texas is one of the fastest growing states in the U.S. currently. It's also becoming more left-leaning. So that's why I think I said this either last episode or 2 episodes ago. Texas is probably going to become the next battleground state because places like San Antonio, Houston, and some other big cities are becoming incredibly influential in the suburbs that exist around those cities, in the cities themselves. And it's probably going to add some more Democrat seats to the Senate in the next coming years, and Congress in the next coming years. So there's that. Wait, where was I going? I was federal funding. Oh yeah, that's right. So like small states, Texas is getting all your people.
Right.
Usually there's opportunities for like federal grants and stuff when you're bleeding, so to speak. I think in countries, if you are a country that promotes a lot of education after having been a very impoverished country, like a lot of Eastern Bloc nations in the EU or in Europe in general, there's something called, it's like brain bleed or brain death, where you focus so much on education, but you don't have any resources for those educated people to like live. So like they don't have any jobs, so like they'll go ahead and leave. Well, the federal government will often provide federal funding for different types of things for different states, depending on the state's stature, that can help benefit your state and the disproportionate growing impoverished or disproportionate disparities in your states. It gives opportunity. Or it can give opportunity for those grants and stuff, or loans and stuff like that. Business decisions are also made off of the census. People will or will not open businesses based off census data, because census data is so broad. Like usually when you're taking surveys or you're doing censuses or you're doing statistical demographic research for like anything, you want as broad of a sample size as possible to get the most accurate thing. And that's like true for almost every aspect of science. The more information you have, the more precise or potentially precise your conclusion could be. So, and that goes back to like federal funding, that goes back to state representatives. All of these things kind of like tie together, and they affect each other. Right. If you weren't able to do it this year and it's closed already, I'm sorry, do it next year. Or not next year, but do it next time it comes around in 10 years. It's super important. Literally can change how a state is represented. And you can change the long-term things in that state. So first of all, that we talked about health insurance like 10 minutes ago with the mental health and everything, and this also ties into that. Did you know Obama, in his first year of president, when he pushed the ACA, he was trying to get a public option available? So no, most people don't. I didn't know this until I saw an interview with him recently where he's like, yeah, when we were pushing the ACA through, there was initially talks and there was written documentation of a public option in the original ACA, but I didn't have the votes there. And this goes back to the Senate. This goes back to the census.
Right.
Obama didn't have the votes. Well, guess what's public? The votes. You can look at who voted, where they represent. You can also look at how they voted, and there's something else too. I forgot the third thing. I always forget the third thing. I'm gonna flash this up here. It's a CNN politics thing. The Senate was the one that voted down the public option for the healthcare bill. Congress voted yes in favor of this. Do you know the conversation that would have been had over the past 8 years if we had a public option? Bernie Sanders' main thing probably wouldn't have been Medicare for all because we would have had a public option. Maybe it would have still been because we can't really know for sure. But that was his biggest thing. And we saw it this year, or I guess last year, during the presidential primaries and the preceding time running up to that. Many of the candidates took the Medicare for all or a public option position, partly because Bernie Sanders made it so open in the previous presidential election cycle. That was his thing. That was his platform. And many of us may not remember this, but when Obama initially ran, he actually talked about the ACA having a public option as part of his campaign. I don't think he made it a big enough part of it. There also was the country was different. That was more than 20 years ago, or not more than 20 years. It was more than 12 years. It was 12 years ago, a little more than 12 years ago, because presidential campaigns start a year or two before. So it was a little more than 12 years ago. So the country was very different, so it might have been different. The census determines your Senate representation. The Senate voted "fuck you" on the public option. That's what they effectively said. They voted "fuck you." Let's look at how the Senate voted.
My question is, how close was the vote?
Not very. Required for majority was half, so 51% or something like that. Vote number was 396, so 396 people voted in the Senate. Oh no, that was the vote number. I don't actually know what that means anymore, because now I'm seeing the yay, nay, not voting. Anyway, the vote counts was 60 yay, 39 nay, and one of them did not vote. And if we look at who voted and how, and what party they represented, all of the Democrats voted in favor. Every single Democrat voted in favor of a public option at the time. And that last portion that did not allow it was literally all Republicans. Every single one of them. Every single one. Tennessee, Wyoming, Utah, Missouri, Kansas, North Carolina, Georgia, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Maine, Tennessee, Texas, Idaho, South Carolina, Nevada, Wyoming, South Carolina, Iowa, New Hampshire, Utah, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Nebraska, Arizona, Florida, Indiana, Arizona, Kentucky, either that's Alaska or Arkansas, I don't remember, Idaho, Kansas, again, either Alaska or Arkansas, twice, Maine, South Dakota, Louisiana, Ohio, Missouri, or Mississippi or whatever. And then Kentucky again for the not voting. Literally, Ohio is already a battleground state. Okay? Texas, we just talked about it, is becoming a battleground state.
Florida's a battleground state.
Florida is currently a battleground state. That's 4 states, and they were mentioned multiple times in there. If we had, can you imagine like talking about, instead of, man, it'd be really fucking nice if we had public health insurance, or at least an option for that. And instead of talking about that, we're talking about, wow, how nice is it to have public health insurance as an option? Like, this would be a completely different world 12 years later.
I didn't know it was that close to getting to a public vote or a public option.
It's super, super important. It's just so important. Again, 60 yay, 39 nay, 1 voted no. And it's just so important, guys. It's just so important. That was the Senate. And then I'm just showing this on screen just to show, like, you know, where to find it, kind of. Congress.gov, Senate.gov, they show the voting stuff. This one here, this is the 113th Congress. It was presented again later by a different representative in 2013. So Obama has been elected. He's gone through 2008, 2012. That was his first period of his first term in office. Second term, 2012, was elected again. They tried voting on it again, and because we're not talking about how we have public health insurance, and we're actually talking about how we don't have it, it obviously did not make it through. So it's just important, guys. Vote census. And for all those people right now who are on the left, who hate electoralism, who hate the way politics currently goes, this is how you change it. Without, revolution. Because as we talked before, the revolution is not happening tomorrow. And even if it did, we wouldn't win. I think this is broad. This is hard to pin down because, first of all, just because you're a registered Democrat doesn't necessarily mean that you fall in line with all Democrats, whatever. Same thing with Republicans. They don't all fall in line with this. I would be willing to bet that far left thoughts and notions stop in the population of the United States at most at 20%. I think at most we'd have 20% of that people who are willing to participate in a revolution. I don't even think you'd have half. We're talking maybe 10%. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's actually 18% who would be willing to participate in a revolution. Even if it was the case, we don't have the power. We don't have the nukes. The left tends to be made up disproportionately so of impoverished individuals, obviously, because we're the people who advocate for fixing these issues. A lot of times it's because of experience of these issues or current living of these issues.
Right.
So shit on Biden all you want. That's fine. Let's vote for him now. Get the fascist out of power. Okay. Vote for Democrat senators or, DSA senators or Congress people.
They are out there.
Green Party senators or Congress people. That's fine too. It makes it for those people are more likely to vote for a public option than like a Republican, but so is a Democrat. Most people don't have that option to vote Green or to vote DSA or to vote whatever. For those like me, I live in a county, I live in a Senate representation where I don't have somebody that far on the ballot. I've ended up voting Democrat because, as we saw, 100% of Democrats voted in favor of this. 100%. So they're willing to fall in line. But we have to change the rest of it. And the only way to do that is to fill out the census and to vote. Like that's it. Otherwise, you're talking about a fruitless revolution that probably won't happen. So
would you say that people like Alex Ocasio
AOC?
AOC.
Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez?
That's her.
Yeah. It's a long name.
Would you say that would you say that she's been influential to people that are like her?
Oh,
like,
hell yeah.
More far left or whatever that are running?
Her and, I hope I don't pronounce her name wrong, but Ilhan I forgot her last name.
She's from Minneapolis also, right?
Yeah, but those two representatives specifically, I think, are incredibly influential, and I think they're like the perfect example of like how we can move forward. Because I would imagine that AOC specifically is probably like a socialist. Like, even if she doesn't like specifically say she is, I would imagine that in her private time when she's writing in her journal, you know, which I recommend everybody does because it's really great for like your mental health and I love it personally, but you know, maybe it's whatever. I hope someone else is able to find something with that. But
you're an advocate.
When she's writing in her journal, I bet she's talking about how like, man, I can't wait for like communist bread to fucking take over the world and just like we all eat, you know, commie bread or something. I don't know. Like, I would imagine she's talking about that because she's already willing to go further than some of her Democrat constituents when it comes to some of these positions. And she's outwardly spoken against like people like Pelosi, which I have mixed feelings about, but I think she's able to play the game fairly well. You know, whatever you shit on Pelosi all you want. She's been doing it for a long time, and she has one of the most consistently left-leaning voting records in Washington right now. So shit on her all you want. That she voted in favor of all this shit. So it's just like, if you want to fix shit, this is how.
I was gonna give you an applause for all of that.
I was really conflicted on what I was gonna talk about this week because there's so much that happened, and I kind of like settled on this finally.
I just love your passion, man. It's really great. It's okay to take a compliment.
There's more that could be said on this, obviously.
Yeah.
Sorry, my daughter's looking at me with a big fat smile. It's so cute. There's more that could be said on this, obviously. And there are people who are better and they know more about this than I do. I mean, I'm fairly certain I've gotten like a ton of shit wrong already. Like, when it comes to like how each thing breaks up or whatever. I don't care about getting the small things wrong so much. The broad topic is vote, participate. And in addition to that, participate in getting these people voted too. You know, I volunteer from time to time locally here with our Putnam County Democratic little party group thing here. It's mostly made up of older people because those are the people who have the free time to do stuff, you know.
Right.
If you have like one day off, message somebody, find out who that person is, message them, hey, look, this is me, this is what I value, whatever. I'm looking to participate somehow. I'm free during these times, and like that's pretty much it. You know, they probably have something for you to do. I've helped start the Putnam Democrat YouTube thing, and we started recording some things, and he's got an editor now. And we don't have a lot of money for production stuff. Their cameras are bad. Their mics are bad. The point is, they're putting out information, and they're trying to grow the party in Putnam County. And hopefully that party will grow to a point that we can splinter off of it, and we can start talking about how the Green Party was represented for the first time as a Senate seat in Putnam County, or whatever, you know, state representative number district I am. I think it's like 19 or 23 or something like that.
Are you saying that you're going to be running soon?
No. God, no. God, no.
Is that a confirmation?
God, no. But I mean, that's how that works. That's how that leads. Because, you know, New York City wasn't always just like, oh yeah, we have all of these options. You know, New York City probably has some of the furthest left options now, because it was such a populated city of left-leaning people. If you can expand your moderate position, you know, if I can expand into the independent position here, which makes up, I think it makes up about 40% of voters here. I think. well, maybe third.
In
Hold
Florida
on. I
or
don't.
nationwide?
Putnam County. I'm sorry. I think Putnam County. It's 19,000 registered Democrats, 25,000 Republicans, and the remainder is independent. Something like that. It's a fairly large group of independents. If we can move those people left leaning or are willing to vote Democrat at some capacity, that's going to be a win. If we can get some of the moderate Republicans to move over to be considered like a moderate Democrat, that's a win. You know, it's a short-term win, but that's something that will lead to 20 years down the line being, I have a Green Party candidate being able to represent or being able to be voted in my district. Right. That's how that works. It takes time. It takes filling out the census every 10 years, and it takes actually like voting.
And not just in the primaries every 4 years.
Yeah, and not just in the primaries. Midterms are super important. Midterms are so important because midterms have congressmen or congresspeople, and midterms have Senate people. And those people shot down our chance of having a public option last time.
Right.
Let's not let it happen again.
I think the last midterm was the biggest turnout ever for midterms, right?
Yeah,
Something
it was.
like that.
Which is great. It's awesome to hear. It's good news.
Yeah.
Let's do the same thing this year.
Right.
And let's do the same thing for the next midterms.
Right. Oh, I definitely agree with you, man. It's very, very important to make your voice
I'm done.
be heard.
I'm done.
Again, Gabriel, I love it. Like guns is cool or whatever, but what I feel like what you're saying, and you bring a lot of passion and ideology to the podcast. That's refreshing to hear. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to just wrap it up there? Did you have anything else to say?
That's it. I'm done. My voice hurts now.
Okay. Well, no worries. Well, let me just throw out a little housekeeping kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody, as I like to say on every episode, everyone that's either subscribed or just listens, who's written reviews, all that kind of stuff. We're kind of slowly but positively showing up in people's news feeds and on the all the different channels that we're on right now. So
and we appreciate the growth too. Like thank you everybody
that's been giving us feedback has been really great. I have an idea for another guest for next week. I'll run that by you when we're not recording.
Woohoo!
But we had our first guest with our friend Artorias, and that was really well received. So I want to do it again, and that's just going to be something that I think we can do regularly. It was a lot of fun, and so we're just gonna keep it going, and maybe we'll do some kind of like special election night live stream or coverage or something.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
And figure out something on that end. And thanks a lot for just sticking with us. So
real quick, I guess too, I want to see if we can. I'm putting them in the description every time as well. I'll be providing a link for Poro Orlando. It's the nonprofit we talked about a couple episodes ago. They're always looking for donations. They're always looking to help people. They take in people who need housing, families, women and children, get them fed, keep them up like that. So until the day that money does not matter and everybody has a place to live and health insurance is widely and freely available, until that day comes, let's support nonprofits like them. And specifically them, as I'll be providing their link in the description below. So any help would be appreciated.
Absolutely. That's our good friend Nathan is sort of in charge of that with our group of people. So, absolutely support the nonprofits that are out there. And I guess we'll just leave it there. So thanks for listening. And we will see you guys next time.
Woohoo! Come back next week.
Bye. Bye.